Wagantall?
I just want to put on record that a little bit about the Somalia affair. It was in 1993 a military scandal. It peaked with the beating to death of a Somali teenager at the hands of 2 Canadian soldiers participating in humanitarian efforts in Somalia. The act was documented by photos, brought to light internal problems within the Canadian Airborne Regiment, and military leaders were sharply rebuked after a CBC reporter received altered documents leading to allegations of a cover-up. Eventually, a public inquiry was called. Despite being controversial, it was cut short by the government, and the Somali inquiry cited problems in the leadership of the Canadian Armed Forces. It led to disbanding of our elite Canadian Airborne Regiment, greatly damaging the morale of the Canadian Forces, marring the domestic and international reputation of Canadian soldiers, and led to the immediate reduction of Canadian military spending by nearly 25%. Now, in that statement, the concluding observations of the inquiry, Dishonored Legacy, the Lessons of the Somalia Affair, states, if Mefloquine did in fact cause or contribute to some of the misbehavior that is the subject of this inquiry, CF personnel who were influenced by the drug might be partly or totally excused for their behavior. In other words, they were never given the opportunity to do the proper study of the impact of this drug, Mefloquine. In other words, a conclusion has already been made on this without doing the proper study. If you go to the Canadian War Museum, yes, there were issues within the regiment, but it blames the Canadian Airborne Regiment with racism for the reason that this happened. So we have people here who have been smeared because they did not have the opportunity to do what needed to be done how long ago. So given what we know, I want to know, in your opinion, is it possible that Clayton Matchey was experiencing a neuropsychic event that led to the death of Shadain Aron?
Almost certainly he was. There is no more logical or likely explanation for what happened to Clayton Matchey. He was floridly psychotic in the days to weeks prior to the killing of Shadain Aron. Had the Somalia Commission of Inquiry investigated the role of Mefloquine, interviewed Marge Matchey, and interviewed others on their experiences with Mefloquine, this point would have been obvious. Clayton Matchey was hallucinating the presence of camel spiders in the bunker as he was whacking the camel spiders, and that led to the beating death of Shadain Aron. This needs to be explored more. It's remarkable, the lack of curiosity as to the role of Mefloquine in the events of that era, the critical events of that era, such an important event in the history of Canada. I am from Canada. I was born here. I was a teenager during the Somalia affair. I distinctly remember how ashamed I felt as a Canadian when that happened. Mm-hmm. I distinctly remember that. And imagine how the disgraced members of the Canadian Airborne Regiment feel. And I believe we owe it to them to fully investigate this matter. And now, knowing what we do about how prevalent symptoms were from Mefloquine among that group, don't we owe it to use the benefit of our 25 years of accumulated experience to go back and re-examine the role of the drug in the events of that era? Our group has long called for a reopening of the Somalia Commission of Inquiry. I wrote to your Prime Minister several months ago, did not receive a reply. But I simply don't understand how one can accept these questions as being unanswered for so long.